Me Up with Roisin Ni Chleirigh.
Good afternoon. You are tuned in and listening to Community Radio Kilkenny City 88.7 FM with me, Roisin Ni Chleirigh, on the Start Me Up business programme. I am so thrilled and delighted on this week's programme. We have Conor Cleere from Kilkenny Leader Partnership, and we have the pleasure and the utmost honour of speaking to Ireland's leading public relations icon and expert, Ellen Gunning. Ellen is the director of the Irish Academy of Public Relations. She has, about a lifetime experience and knows how to effectively manage PR on a budget tight. Additionally, we will explore the topic of how small businesses can engage with and from relationships with the local media as they begin to grow. Ellen has written 3 books. Her first book, Public Relations, A Practical Approach, core text for all courses in PR throughout Ireland. And in 2005, Ellen designed a postgraduate higher diploma courses in PR and journalism, which is validated by HETEC, the Higher Educational Training Awards Council, for at level 8 on the national framework. Her second book, A Capital Women of Influence, profiles 13 women across the range of disciplines who excels in incredible influence over Dublin. Her third book, Red Hot Tips to Promote Your Business, was published in September 2016. Ellen also presents her Mediascope radio show 1:30 on a Tuesday on Dublin's 103.2 Dublin City FM. In studio, startup expert guest Conor Cleere, who is a SICAP programme coordinator with the Kilkenny Leader Partnership. Ellen Gunning, you are very welcome to the Community Radio Kilkenny City Start Me Up business programme.
Roisin Ni Chleirigh, I have to tell you, I hardly recognise myself at all from that introduction. I think I'll go home now and just bask in the glow of the intro. Lovely to be chatting to you.
Well, Ellen, as I said, you're quite an icon of mine, and I had the privilege of meeting you twice before. You know, you are like the icon of public relations, especially for an awful lot of the media and PR students across the country.
That's what happens when you're still alive and people study your book, Roisin.
Not just one book. I have also have your book, 10 Red Hot Tips to Promote Your Business. As soon as it came out, I had to get it, and it's just an amazing book, especially for our program, Start Me Up business program.
Yes, because your program, your radio show is geared to people who are new into the world of business and trying to really survive on a bootstrap, spend as little money as possible, but make as much progress as possible in a short period of time. And public relations is a great tool to do that.
And Ellen, if I may just introduce you to our local startup expert, Conor Cleere from the Kilkenny Leader Partnership. He's in studio with us.
Hi, Conor. Nice to chat with you.
Ellen, likewise. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
And what you have to say too.
I might be quiet.
I'm sure Roisin won't allow that.
No.
Ellen, as we said, you're what you don't know about SMEs and start-up businesses and PR, even in the corporate world, the media and the PR world, nobody will ever know. And what I'm really interested to get from you for our start-up listeners is, what is PR? Why is it vital for start-up businesses to know and understand and how to use PR? And another question, I know it's 2 questions, is why is it vital for start-ups to build relationships with the local media?
Well, let me start with the what is PR question, because I suppose it's one of the areas that people most get wrong. And people confuse public relations with publicity, they confuse it with promotion, they confuse it with advertising and marketing, and partly that's the responsibility of the PR industry itself. For a communications organisation, PR is bad at explaining what it does. If you think about advertising, the purpose of advertising is to sell. So you buy an ad on your radio station and you say, I can control all of the information in this ad that's going out. So I've written the audio, it's 40 seconds long, and it's a compelling reason for you to buy my product. And that's what advertising does. It should. Good advertising compels you to buy, and you evaluate it by seeing how many people bought that product. So did my sales go up? How many people interacted with the website based on the ad? So it's easy to evaluate. Publicity is a tool of public relations, but not public relations. So publicity is you pick up the paper and you see there's a well-known celebrity and they're publicising something, or there's a well-known celebrity just looking for publicity for themselves, attending a function or a lunch or something. And publicity is the lifeblood of the business arena, I suppose. We all survive. We live and die by publicity, but it depends on what kind of publicity you're looking for, depending on where you're coming from. Public relations effectively is communications. If advertising sells, public relations tells. So what PR does is it gives you the tools. Public relations people are like doctors, if I could explain it this way. If you go to a doctor, if the doctor has, in effect, this doctor's bag, and they open it up and say, well, now let me see, you have a bad cough. It might be that I need to prescribe you with cough medicine, or I might need to actually send you for an x-ray. I don't really like the sound of that. Or they might say, look, you're an old codger, there's nothing wrong with you, go back to work, you're grand. Or they might actually say, Janie, I'm not so sure, I knew somebody who had a cough like that, I didn't like it then, and they're not still around. So they actually evaluate what's wrong with you. Public relations people do exactly the same. Public relations looks at who are you communicating with, so who are you trying to reach, who's working for you, who's very important within the local community, so your bank manager, your local journalist, your local radio station. Who are the people who can help to make or break your business? Who are your customers? And then public relations basically says, how do I talk to all of them? Not how do I sell to them. How do I talk to all of them? And talking, it's really a conversation. It's like you and I today. It's you're asking questions, I'm answering them. It's an interaction. And what public relations tries to do is keep all of these people informed of what you're doing, honestly informed of what you're doing, very often excitedly informed about what you're doing, because if you're a new business, you're very excited about what you're into yourself anyway, and tries to get you interacting with the business. Somebody else can sell to you afterwards. But all of the research shows that we're very reluctant to buy from a company we don't know. We buy from a brand that we actually know. So if people know you're local, you're a new startup, you're doing something that nobody else has done before, if they know something about you, they're much more inclined to look at you and say, I'll investigate this a bit more. What are these people actually doing? But if they've never heard of you, they look at it and think, and we all do, it's like, not never heard of them, move on. So that's really what public relations does. It gives you a framework to communicate with all of the people who are important for the success of your business.
Conor, you were talking through the break about what Ellen was saying.
Yeah, listen, I suppose the majority of people that we would work with through Kilkenny Leader Partnership are very much startups. And I suppose the danger with those early heady days of startups is that everything gets lost in the mist. So people they tend to be, owner managers. So they have to produce a product or carry out a service. They have to try and make sure that there's all the things that need to be done around the business, and sometimes PR can get lost. And what I've noticed is some people spend a huge amount of time in, I suppose, around advertising, and the danger is that they're not actually targeting their true customers. Just like Ellen said, they need to take a step back and say, right, who do I aim this towards? Or, who do I need to be going after? And they get lost in that. So it's really interesting to see, to hear what Ellen has to say around that, and that people need to become more focused on how they attract attention to themselves, how they get their news out there, and to make, to improve that relationship with local media.
And actually, Conor, just picking up on that, the other thing that if you're a small owner manager, you're pulled and dragged in 101 different directions.
Absolutely,
because as you say, you're trying to do absolutely everything. If you start with a plan from a PR point of view, if you start by saying, I would like to get local media coverage once every 3 months, as opposed to, I'd love everybody to be talking about me every week, but once every 3 months, and maybe once every 3 months, the first 3 months I'll try to get something on the Start Me Up programme, and 3 months later I'll try to get something into the Kilkenny people, and 3 months after that I'll do something else. It creates a great momentum, but doesn't eat up all of your time, and doesn't end up getting, as you say, lost in that mist of, I've so many things to do, I'm drowning here, I don't know how to come up for air. It's a very good point.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, I suppose, for the startups is it's possibly a lack of confidence. So they feel that maybe our service is not good enough yet, maybe our product is not good enough yet, but they need to get into their head that if they want to succeed, they have to have 110% belief in it. And part of it is around building their own confidence around that product or service, to the extent where they're going after these opportunities in media. So it's making the appointment with the likes of Roisin to come on this show, or it's making the whatever necessary contacts with Kilkenny people to get in a feature part. So it's about getting out there themselves.
In fact, if I could just pick you up on that, if you don't mind, can I give you some hints and tips about for SMEs to deal with media? Okay, well, if I was coming up with a hit list, one would be to actually look at the media that are important to you. So pick the Start Me Up programme, is there a specialist writer in Kilkenny People on business?
There is,
business
yeah,
trends,
there'll be a feature, yeah.
There. Okay. So there's a business trends, or whatever area your business is in, so whether it's fashion or food, is there somebody who writes on that area as well? So actually identify 3 or 4, not splurge one again, 3 or 4 people who are important to you. That's a really big advantage that your business people have in Kilkenny that we don't have in Dublin, is that it's a much smaller, more local area. It's very difficult to walk into a journalist in the Irish Independent or the Irish Times, which is the equivalent of the Dublin newspapers, and say, how are you? This is what I'm doing. It's a new business. Can I tell you about it? Because they'll say, are you mad? I don't have 10 seconds. Now, they don't have 10 seconds either in Kilkenny, but they're much more inclined to say to you, I'll give you 5. Tell me who you are and what you're doing. Now I've made the connection, shake hands and go. But at least they can put a face to you and they know what you're doing. And I think if you can physically walk in and introduce yourself, you can do it by email, but we all interact with people. So if you can actually walk in the door and say, how are you? Or stop Roisin on the street and say, come here, you don't know me at all, but I know you're Roisin Ni Chleirigh and you do that programme. I'm going to contact you at some stage. We all love it. Like, media builds on all of the contacts. Here are all these other people that are interesting, that are out there. Roisin isn't going to find every new business herself. So help her. Yeah. Give her suggestions. Tell her that you're out there. So that's one element. Introduce yourself. The second is to actually get into the habit of issuing press releases. But press releases, what SMEs get really wrong is, and we all do it. I mean, I run my own business and I think every single thing that I do every minute and hour of the day is desperately exciting. I love what I do. I expect everybody else to get as excited, but I know they won't. It's not big news to them, it's big news to me. So it's actually choosing only issuing a press release or contacting the media when you really have news. And news is something that's of interest to people that they haven't heard before. It's not necessarily something brand new. So you could have a piece of news that says there has never been this kind of business in Kilkenny before, and I researched it, and the nearest business has been, it's not earth-shattering, but it's that kind of curiosity thing that we all read and go, I never thought about that. So there was never a cobblers in Kilkenny. That can't be right. You know, the kind of thing that gets people talking, presuming that you researched it, of course. Or the news about how you came up with the idea for a product. You know, there you were. Mary O'Rourke gave an interview a number of years ago, a long number of years ago, when she was still a minister. And she did the interview with Morning Ireland Radio. I can't for the life of me, I don't think anybody in the country who heard it can remember what the interview was about. But she said, and there I was, sitting in the bath in the morning thinking, isn't that curious? And the whole country went into it. I know I did. Who sits in the bath first thing in the morning? What's all that? Who has that kind of time? Why wasn't she in the shirt? She's a minister, right? But she painted a picture, and radio lets you paint a picture. So if you can do that and say, I was there as well, sitting on the tractor one day, and it suddenly struck me, why the hell isn't there a gadget that does this? Or, you know, I thought it was something completely different. And in my head, I'm thinking, have you nothing else to be doing sitting on the tractor except wondering about that? It's how you tell the story, so it's structuring it. So a press release only if you have news. I think photographs and video have become so important. So if you can send a really good photograph to the newspapers, they can't resist it. And one of the things SMEs get wrong, I think, and charities do it as well, is that they feel they haven't the budget for a photographer. So they take photographs themselves and they work on the basis that these are local people. So it's Roisin and Conor and Ellen, and sure everybody knows them. So they'll put the picture in. And actually what they're more likely to do is look at it and say, sure, it's those 3 old codgers again. That's what I want a picture of them for. But if you have Roisin on a tractor, and you were talking to her about something and they say, what's the Kilkenny leadership up to at all? What are they doing with Stark? Why are they on a tractor? The photograph will catch your attention, and a photograph really is worth 1,000 words. You get a good photograph in. If you look at all of the research, we skim social media, we look at newspapers on the basis of the photographs. We read the captions and then we move on. Very often we don't read the articles at all. So we're really good. Spend time putting a really clever photograph together. Don't send them everything. Send them really good photos. And the same with video. If you have a little piece of video of something that's happening, all of the stats on video now, when I started way back in, say about 30 years ago, we used to create videos which were 35 minutes long. I remember the very first one I created about 30 years ago was, I didn't shoot it, but I was responsible for bringing in the videographers. It was 35 minutes long. As far as I can remember, it cost 30,000. Would it have been euros? I think it might have been pounds even at that stage. It was savagely expensive. And video could only be created by major companies. Now all the statistics will tell you that if your video is running, I spoke to a videographer this morning who's doing work for us, and I said to her that I need 3 versions of the video. I need a 1-minute version, and that is the longest version. I need a 30 seconds, and I need a 10 seconds. Because people don't have an attention span. And I need to catch them on Twitter and on Instagram and on Facebook so that they really get the whole story in 10 seconds or 30 seconds. But equally, they might decide, I'm really curious about it, I'll watch the whole minute. Now, there's nobody in the country who can't, with a little bit of training, actually shoot video with their smartphone, edit it on their smartphone, cut it down, splice it, create it into something that people will be curious about. So that's another element, visual. We all think visual rather than text, so think visually. And the other thing with local media is always interested in statistics. Now, your statistics don't have to be statistically valid. You would really need to conduct research with 1,000 people or more. But if you can say, I made 200 phone calls in the Kilkenny area, and do you know that 70% of people said, now you've got an interesting, quirky statistic that stands up for your area. So look at things that you can do, and if you structure the question, you can get a couple of interns or some friends to help you. The questionnaires need to be professionally done or need to be clever, but the people who are asking them just need to know what it is they're asking. So use statistics. Media love them. It'll get you another opportunity. And I suppose the final thing, sorry, I'm conscious I'm chatting on here, but the final thing is actually update media once a year. So when you walk in the first time and you say hello to Roisin, for example, and you say, listen, this is my new business and I've just set it up. I'd love to do your programme at some stage this year. Can I just contact you? If I haven't heard from you or you haven't heard from me in a year, can I contact you in a year's time and tell you how we're getting on? Nobody minds. You're not looking for anything out of it, but you're saying, this is what we achieved in the past year. And it may be that you took on one extra person. And your point, Conor, was like, if you're the owner manager, you're doing everything yourself. Well, that's 100% increase in staff. And you can do that in a really quirky way and say, we've increased our staff by 100%, you know. There's now me and there's another me. And nobody minds because you're saying, oh, well, you're going in the right direction. You're doing well. You're employing somebody. That's fantastic. So actually come back once a year and say, not for any publicity. I don't want anything out of it. I just want to tell you how well we're doing. So here's the update. And it's amazing how that will turn into maybe 3 or 4 months later, that same journalist ringing you and saying, you were involved in X area. Do you want to give me a comment on? And that's really where you're trying to get to, that you don't push everything yourself, that occasionally they ring you and say, would you like to give me a comment on that? So that there's loads, like media already exists. People buy it, they consume it. They're on media. We all live on media all day, every day. So maximise it. It's a very good point. There's so much you can do at no cost.
And one thing I read in your book, 10 Red Hot Tips to Promote Your Business, is that you said even when we're at home at night, we're watching television, we're on our mobile phones, we use so many different devices at the one time. From watching television, we could be tweeting, we could be sending a message, or even texting into a radio station like Community Radio Kilkenny City. And we are so connected to media, even on our phones.
But you look at, none of us switch off, really. I mean, the last thing you do at night is you look at your phone. The first thing you do in the morning is you look at your phone. I mean, I actually think, it's really good to get out of bed first before you look at your phone, but I know an awful lot of young people just instantly reach for the phone before, like, our eyes are hardly open and they're trying to figure out what's happening in the world. So, and you're right, everybody now connects. I mean, look at the people who tweet and say, I'm watching this movie. Is anybody else watching it? Have you seen it before? Is it worth watching? Should I spend any longer on it? So that we don't sit in a corner and read a newspaper anymore, or sit in a dark room and watch television. You're absolutely right. We interact constantly. And you might be doing all that while you're trying to do a bit of research as well on the laptop. So you're actually watching television and think, that's really good, I'll comment on that, but I'm still trying to find out something else. So we massively multitask, and our attention span is, I'm not sure if it's much shorter, but it's certainly more like a kaleidoscope. We expect to have a number of things going on at the same time. And it's a good point to remember. And it also means that if you're listening to a radio show and you hear something that ties back to your business, you can instantly text in and say, hey, that's interesting because we make something like this, or my company does whatever. And you'll get a more publicity. Very good point.
And also, Ellen, you state in your book that PR, especially with a self-employed or a startup, PR is about a combination of creative thinking and persistence and knowledge of the market that you're operating in.
I think that's very clever. Did I actually say that?
Yeah, you said that. Yeah, you said it on page 8.
Wow. Okay, you're now scaring me seriously, Roisin. Honestly, creative thinking. If you think about it, there's nothing in the world that any of us. Well, that's an exaggeration, but there's very little that we do which is completely and absolutely new. So more or less anything that we're doing in any business has been done before. So the creative thinking is about how can I actually present this story in a way that people will enjoy it and will interact with it. So a really simple thing. If you're looking at people who use your product, can you find the oldest person or the youngest person? And that's not ages. The oldest person, if you have a 95-year-old who loves your cutting-edge technology, you've got to study. You've got a story. You've got a creative angle. You've got, wow, if this 95-year-old can live on this technology and loves this software and uses it every day, everybody should be doing it. If you have a very young person who is really into your business and it's an antique shop, because we associate antiques with older people, you've got an angle. So being creative about how you tell your story. It's not a straight line. It's find a way that people will actually think that's quirky, that's interesting, that's engaging. And persistence, I think, in any business, you've got to be persistent. But with public relations, we did a piece at one stage, and it was for a client, and it was RTE, it was the nationwide programme, and it was west of Ireland. And I rang the woman more or less every 4 or 5 weeks and said, I had phoned originally and pitched an idea for them to cover and said, will you be over in this particular, I don't want to identify the client too carefully, so will you be over in this particular county any time in the next 4 or 5 months? And the researcher said, we could be, I'm not sure if we will be or not, but certainly it's a great idea and we'd love to do it. And I rang literally every 4 or 5 weeks and said, oh, it's me again, listen, I just thought I'd cross-check with you, has anything happened, what's the story? And eventually, I think after 6 or 7 months, she said, in fact, we'll be doing that in 3 months' time, we'll be in that county in 3 months' time, and we'll do it for you, which was almost a year from the time I first started contacting them. And I said, that's brilliant, thanks a million. And she said, God, fair play to you, you must be 2 or 3 months ringing me. She had no idea it was 6 months. I didn't bug her, I literally just phoned and said, what's the story? Is it still on your radar? Can I give you a shout in another few weeks' time? So persistence, yes, because it's in your interest. If you've identified, and it's back to the point I was making, and Conor was making earlier, things getting lost in the mist, don't try to do everything. If you've identified nationwide and you've a good story, just sit with nationwide till you get it. But that could be a long run. And the third area you mentioned was knowledge of your industry. If you're running a business, you have all of the get up and go, self-starter. You don't need anybody to tell you how to run the business. You may need the skills, but you know there is something which gets you out of bed in the morning. And what gets you out of bed in the morning is the fact that you know and you believe, back to Conor's point again, that what you're doing is really good. You're producing a great product. You know this industry. So if you know the industry, play to your strengths. Don't try to do something that would run against the industry. I have absolutely no interest in sport. I'm terrible. I know nothing about sport. But I end up always, if I'm planning anything, saying to somebody who's into sport, can somebody tell me, is anything likely to happen on that day? Because if you're into sport, you know that the third Sunday in September is one thing and the first Monday in February is something else. I'd never know it. But my knowledge of the industry is communications industry, not the sports industry. So if you're on the other side, your knowledge is sports. So try and tie that in with how do you gain a little bit of knowledge of the PR industry.
God, I'm just here amazed. It's like we are having a masterclass in PR here, Ellen.
I just love talking about it.
Well, Ellen, we have to go for another short break, but you'll still be with us after the break, and we'll be talking more about, we were talking about being creative and persistent and knowing your industry. In your book, you also say is about finding out what your customers' interests are and who they follow in the media, from politicians to celebrities to movie stars and to people in the media. So we'll be talking about that after the break.
Super.
We are Community Radio Kilkenny City 88.7 FM.
You're very welcome back to the Start Me Up business programme with myself, Roisin Ni Chleirigh, Conor, Cleere, and Ireland's leading expert and icon on public relations, Ellen Gunning.
I suppose, Ellen, during the break, myself and Roisin were talking about, the many points that you made just around PR, and I suppose for a lot of us, we wouldn't necessarily have quite the understanding that you have of PR and that, but we're just thinking that when you look at this radio programme here with Roisin, it's an ideal platform for new start-up businesses to get the confidence to come on, to take the opportunity to, I suppose, to tell people about what they're doing, be it a service or be it a product, and to hone those skills around using PR and using those, I suppose, whatever tools are available to them. Would you agree?
I agree with you entirely. And in fact, what your programme probably does, which they will never have another opportunity to do, is it allows them to say to somebody like Roisin, can I roughly cover these areas, and maybe work out the questions in advance, so that if they're new to radio, because on radio you'll never get the questions in advance, because it's about a debate, it's about a conversation, it's like us bouncing around today. But for a new business, it can often help to structure one or two questions and say, okay, now I know what she's going to ask me about, so it takes a little bit of the fear out of it. And in fact, I was thinking during the break, when you were talking about what customers' interests are and who they follow and how you can use others, it struck me that there were two resources that I can leave with people, if you don't mind, just before it runs out of my brain, and we end up that we've lost the opportunity. One was the book Roisin was talking about, Not Because It's Mine, 10 Red Hot Tips to Promote Your Business, by Mercier Press. I don't know of any other book that actually covers public relations for the small, medium-sized enterprise businesses, that specifically says, here are things you can do that will take time but won't cost you money. So it's one resource, and I'm sure you can get it from a library if you're stretched or whatever. And the other is prtrainingonline.com. And what that is we've a number of SMEs who have it's a membership platform, but we've a number of people who have signed up to it, and it's basically a series of courses. There are 14 there at the moment. We put up 6 every 3 months, and they're 3-hour bite-sized upskilling on specific areas of PR. So they're perfect for an SME. You've no background in it, but you want to, somebody has said to you, I'd love to take a feature article. Dip into it and find out, how do you do a feature article? It's 3 hours. You don't get the whole of PR, but you get that one piece. Or dip into it and find out how to shoot video footage with your smartphone or whatever. So the two of those, I think, are really good resources. Coming back to the question that you left as my earworm for the break, who do people follow? Looking at what your customers are interested in. People love to know that other people think well of your business. I can tell you that my business is absolutely brilliant, and anybody running a business will tell you exactly the same thing. You're in business because you want to be the best in your field, but really me telling you that I'm good means nothing. Somebody else telling you that I'm good makes a huge difference. So somebody else stopping you and saying, have you actually been in that butcher's? God, his meat is fantastic. And do you know, he'd really go to a lot of trouble. Like, I had my mother down last week and she wants X and Y, and he took the time to get me exactly what my mother would love. It makes a huge difference. So finding other people, testimonials if you're using them. So sort of 3 areas if I can. One is testimonials. If you're using them, make sure I know who the people are, so that it's not Jane. Who's Jane? I could write something and say I was Jane. So it's Jane M, possibly, from Kilkenny City or from a region outside Kilkenny, so that I know roughly it is a real person and they have given a testimonial. And if they don't mind, use their surnames. On all of our websites, we use surnames of people, so they are real people. You can check them out. They have said what they say. Second one is to look for third-party endorsers, so the people who will say good things about you just because you love watching them. The celebrities, like, what are they up to? What are they doing? Newbridge Silver they've used a number of different celebrities, but probably one of their most successful was Amy Huberman, because people love what Amy Huberman does. She's a great woman on Twitter. She has a very quirky sense of humour. People just enjoy following her. Brian O'Driscoll is her husband. So the two of them they've a celebrity status. And I'm going back a bit now, but when she was expecting her second child, she wore a long piece of jewellery from Newbridge. Newbridge had no idea that she was going to wear it. She basically was going to tweet that she was pregnant. She was expecting a baby. She chose the dress, the coat, and this long necklace that she wore. And she tweeted that coat was by this person, necklace was by Newbridge, dress was by somebody else, bump was by Bob. It was a pure Amy Huberman tweet. Newbridge sold out of the first run of that necklace. And they went to a second run and they sold out of the second run, because people she wasn't doing it as an ad. It was just, this is what I'm wearing. All of these people sponsored her in some way, but she was saying, this is what I chose to wear. I like this. What do you think? And it sold out. So somebody else, a celebrity who endorses you in some way, either by wearing your product or by talking about your product, makes a huge difference. And if you think, again, back locally, right, you can't afford an Amy Huberman or any of the celebrities. In fairness, they make money from it. A small, medium-sized enterprise can't do it. So look around and see, who do you know? Do you know somebody who's famous on television? Do you know a county GAA player? Who do you know that people might say, gosh, no, and he thinks or she thinks that they're a great company, and all you want them to do is maybe mention you in an interview or step into a photograph for you. Figure out how you can best use them, but use the people that your customers are interested in. And just to make you think one more thing, there's no point in me, if my customers have an interest in GAA, there's no point in me saying I have a great contact in Corey Carrington, because they're not into golf, so it'll mean nothing to them. So find where the customers are interested in, find the celebrities that they follow, find the sports that they're interested in, and see, do you know somebody who'll oblige you? Just once or twice. Celebrities are great at doing things for nothing for charities. So you can't really ask them to do, in fairness, a huge amount for you for nothing as an SME, because that's how they earn their living. But most of them will do something for you if they know you. So use the people you know, basically.
And also, you also say in your book, Ellen, is identify trends. What is cool and what is not cool?
Really important, because if it's trending, we're all talking about it. Have you looked at those Chili's water bottles? We were only talking about them in the office last week, and one of the girls was saying that she never heard of a Chili's water bottle before Christmas. Absolutely everybody got one for Christmas. They ran a fantastic campaign. They are on trend. Everybody wants one. So if you can tap into the trends, don't be behind the trend. You can be slightly ahead of it, but that's expensive if you're a small business. Try to catch the wave just as it's cresting. So hop onto a trend as it's hot and hop back off again. Use the trends, but that means keeping an eye to what's happening around you and actually being conscious that you're looking for trends. You're trying to see, why have I heard about that 2 or 3 times in a row? That's beginning to become a thing. I should keep an eye on it.
And Ellen, we've got about 3 or 4 minutes left. Public relations, if you think, see somebody was sort of saying, okay, I want to start a business, I'm afraid, I don't have the budget. And with Conor here, and Conor would see how many clients a day coming in doing the business plan, and the thing is, how do people know what I'm getting at? The most important thing for anyone who goes to Conor is they have to know what they do, how they're going to do it, but most importantly, it's the why they do it, isn't it?
It's important to know all of those, and it's also important, and I'm thinking with my pure PR head on me, it's also important to be able to present to Conor. So if they're looking for leader funding or leader consultancy, or they're looking for leader to buy into their business, then they actually need to be able to stand there and say, here's what I do and how I do it and why I do it, but they need to be able to do it with conviction. And that comes back to believing in your own head that you can do it, but it also comes back to practicing. How do you communicate? It's it's like one of your most important customers. If leader is going to help you in any way, they're a vital customer for your business. So how do you reach leader? And if you go back to your PR tools, it may be that you've had a press release in the local paper, or because they're connected with the radio program that you've been on, Start Me Up, and that you've worked really hard to say, I'm doing my best, even if it's just, I'm doing my best to push this story as hard as I can. But it's communicating everything that you believe in with confidence. Because as Conor said earlier, you're a one-man band, you're a one-woman band, you're a one-person organisation. If you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will. So it's really getting that right in your mind and then figuring out what other tools can you use to help other people to know how much belief you have and to believe with you that your product and your business has a future.
I'm just amazed listening to you. As I said before the break, it's like having a PR masterclass here at Start Me Up Business Programme.
I have to tell you, it's just because I love gabbing about this industry. Somebody said that if you never work a day in your life, if you work in something you love, and I've been blessed to work in something I love for the last 30 years. I just adore it. I don't actually see stories, I see PR implications of stories. It's just the way I rock, but I love chatting about it, and it was really, really marvellous to be invited onto your programme.
It was just even a thrill for me to have you on the show, because you're someone who I learned all my PR from, through college, and then you came down to IT Carlow, and then I went up to the radio station where you present the Media Scope programme, which goes on air every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. And it's just a pleasure, to actually be able to share who I looked up to in public relations with our listeners.
Well, do you know, Roisin, that you hit on something that's really important in any business, in public relations or in any business that you run. The reason you and I know each other is because you don't miss any opportunity. So you met me down in Carlow, we spoke afterwards, you drove another student up. You weren't the one who was being interviewed, but you drove her up. You got to know what the radio station was like. You're proactive. And I think that's really important in any business, that you constantly think, sure, I'll do it anyway. Like an awful lot of things you don't necessarily get an immediate hit out of, but you do further down the road. And if I hadn't met you, I'd never have had an opportunity to talk to you on the radio show. And an awful lot of business is like that. It's just doing things because it feels right or because you're really interested, you're invested. And somehow it inevitably generates a sort of a payback that you never looked for.
Well, unfortunately, Ellen, we've run out of time, but I'm sure that you'll be a media and public relations expert going forward for the Start Me Up Business Programme.
Roisin, can I just sign out as the mothership here, saying it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And can I remind your listeners of those two resources, 10 Red Hot Tips to Promote Your Business, the book by Mercier Press, and prtrainingonline.com for their online resource. And thank you so much for having me.
Ellen Gunning, thank you so much indeed. And Conor Cleere, as every week, thank you very much for you, Conor Cleere from Kilkenny Leader Partnership.
Thank you.
Until next week, it's a goodbye from me. Bye-bye.
We are Community Radio.